In this episode, I have a Samsung PN51A530. This is a 51-inch plasma TV, and the complaint on this is it's taking longer and longer to turn on. So I gotta think power supply, right? Let's see what the problem is. This would have been one of the last of the plasmas to roll off the line, August 2012. I don't know exactly when Samsung stopped making them, but I believe it was at the end of the 2012 run, either 2012 or 2013. As you can see, this one's actually quite energy efficient, although it does have a maximum power consumption of 295 watts. The average power is 105, which actually made these quite energy efficient compared to the older ones, which I've got a Panasonic that has a power consumption of 795 watts. And some of the older ones can really chew up a fair bit of power. The complaint on this one is it's taking longer and longer to start. I'm thinking power supply, maybe some caps that are going bad in the power supply or something in the power supply. He says it does come on, but it's just taking longer. You press the power button, you'll hear it click, and it'll sit there and blink. The power light will blink longer and longer before the set comes on. So maybe a power supply issue. We'll pull the back off this one and take a look at it and see if there's anything obvious. Of course, another thing it could be ground screws. That's another thing that can cause issues on some of these sets. So we'll check the ground screws out and we'll look for any capacitors that are in a failure state. Take a look at everything and see, as I say, the set when it turns on, it works and it's got a good picture once it starts up. So our boards on this one, we have our Y buffer over here. We have our Y sustain board. We have our they call this one the A communications, I believe. This is the address driving board. We have our control board, which is the equivalent of the timing controller board. We have our input-output board, our AV board. We have our X main or common mode sustain board, and of course the power supply. Most likely culprit on this is going to be the power supply. We're going to look at the power supply for any bad caps and so forth. Before I do that, I'm just going to make sure that all of these grounds are snug, because loose ground screws, oh, that one's really loose. That one's really loose. That might be the problem right there. This one here is so loose. Got a better screwdriver in there. Like this one's so loose that I can even turn it with my hand. Look at that. See that? That's how loose that one is, without even putting a screwdriver. How about this one? That one's also relatively loose, as is. That one's not too bad. That one's okay. That one's not too tight either. So how about these ones? Yeah, that one's not too bad. That one's loose, really loose. If I can turn them with two fingers like that, that's not good. So that could be part of this problem right there, is loose ground. So we're going to tighten all these ground screws up. As you can see, they're all taking torque. Loose ground screws, very common problem on plasma TVs because of the heating and cooling effect, because these boards have a fair bit of power going through them. And because these all have metal tabs on them, you know that they're grounding through the metal chassis. So we want to make sure that the boards are all tight and snug. Check those ones too, but it's more the common mode and the Y sustain, or the X main and the Y main in the case of Samsung. Those are typically the ones that cause the most amount of problem. Those ones are okay. That one's okay. That one's okay. What about these ones? Are these loose here? Yep. You see, like half a turn. Oh, really loose. Loose ground screws will actually blow parts up. I guess the only one on that one. And how about the power supply screws? Are they loose too? Of course they're loose, you see. I'm not going to tighten these ones just yet because that one's really loose too. I'm going to remove the power supply. And these are all loose. So we're going to take the power supply out and just take a look at the power supply first. And then I'll check some caps on it. And then we'll put it back together and give it a try. Here's something else I noticed that's really interesting on this one. If you look at this board here, it clearly says it's Samsung, but you notice the color of the board. It's a conventional brown circuit board. Look over at the buffer board. Look at all the chips. All those chips are Panasonic. And the board itself, it looks like it's made at a different factory. Could this be that this board was made by Panasonic for Samsung? Very possible, because I don't see any Samsung branding on it. You see, that board has nothing on there to indicate that it's a Samsung board. The other boards certainly do. That board says Samsung on it. This other board over here, I believe it says Samsung on it too. Where's the label on this one? That board says Samsung. Interesting. Look at the ground tabs here on the power supply. That looks like arcing, doesn't it? How about the next tab over here? How's this one look? That not look like arcing to you? Same with that tab, you see? It almost looks like there's been arcing there. After giving a close inspection to the power supply board, note these connections right down here. Look at the cracks. There are cracks around these connections right there. You see the cracks? Probably pick at this with a screwdriver and it'll move. Grab something here. Looking at this with my magnifier, so. You see the crack around there? I bet you this is the problem. All these connections, these are on some of the these diodes, or these transistors. These are diodes. So these diodes here on this heat sink, they're all cracked, every one of them. You can see them clear as day. See the cracks along here? Cracks along there. I bet you that's the fault on this one. There's these diodes. The transistors look to be okay. They've mounted some of them on the bottom here. Lots of diode too. Right, these ones look okay. But some of these ones here on the heat sinks. Let's look at the MOSFETs up on the other side here. How do these ones look? They're probably okay. I think it's probably just the diodes that are cracked, but for sure, I think that's where the problem on this one is. And just from his description that it was not turning on and taking longer to come on, and then that just it sure sounded like a capacitor problem. But now that I see the those cracks on the diodes, I'm thinking that that's where the fault is it wasn't getting power. You see, if we look at them at a different angle here, where are they? Down here. So I'm going to reflow all of these diodes and power the setup and see whether it starts up. I haven't tried to power it up since I got it because I didn't want to do any damage if there was any loose connections or anything. the fellow that owns it said it was taking longer and longer to start, so I didn't want to power it up just in case, you know, there was a loose ground. I didn't want to risk blowing something up on it, because that can certainly happen, like these ones here too, right? The board looks like it needs a good going over. So let's go over the board and reflow these connections, and then I'll put the board back in the set and we'll just try it and see whether it works. And I'm betting it's going to work. I'm betting this is going to be all that's wrong with this set is these connections are bad. Getting low on solder. I'm gonna have to get a new roll. It's okay, I got a vintage radio that I'm going to be restoring next, actually, and I got to get some high voltage caps for it, so I'll pick up some solder while I'm down at the parts place. I've actually had to clear stuff off the table, like my toolbox is sitting right in front of me here, so I could put the TV up where the tools normally sit. Lead-free solder crap. No, we don't want to do that, do we? See, these being a dual diode, if one leg let go, the voltage would certainly drop. You know, the very fact that this TV appears to have a buffer board that was made by Panasonic would not surprise me at all, because 2012 Panasonic went out of the plasma business and LG and Samsung continued in it for another year or two. And it would not surprise me at all, because, you know, Samsung had some buffer board problems earlier on some of their early sets. They had buffer board failures. It would not surprise me at all. Panasonic usually had some pretty good buffer boards, that they wouldn't have just gone to Panasonic and said, "Hey, you know, we'll buy your surplus, make us some boards." And Panasonic, being a component supplier, would have said, "Yeah, no problem. How many do you need?" Of course, where's Panasonic today? Well, they're not making TVs anymore, that's for sure. Panasonic TV factory shut down. I think they left in around 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. maybe 2018, but they don't make TVs anymore, which is too bad. I always liked Panasonic Plasma TVs. They're one of my favorites. Samsung is good too. I've got Samsung and Panasonic Plasma sets. Those ones look like they're heat stressed, don't they? Same with these two. If we look on the other side of the board, you'll see that this is where there's a couple thermistors here, and they do get warm. Sorry about that. I got interrupted by a phone call from a pollster asking who I'm going to vote for in the federal election coming up in a couple of weeks. And the thing to this is, I always press a button for a party that I'm not going to vote for, because I like to fuck with them, give them the wrong information, because I find it so annoying. I had 2 calls yesterday and now 1 today. Oh, here's another connection here, you see? Look at the crack on this one here. I'll get a close-up of this one. You see the crack right around here? If the camera will focus. Come on, camera, you can focus. See the crack right there? This one looks like it's got a crack on it too. Right there. If you're wondering where all those noises are coming from, they're building a new house up the street from me right now. Everybody's building a new house. All the old houses are coming down. I guess I started a trend in 2002 when I did the same thing. And all the old little houses are coming down, and they're putting up great big, gigantic houses in place of them. Building as big a house as they can build on the lot. And of course that's just so that they can, sell it for $1.5 million or $1.7 million. That's what the The average price of a house in my neighborhood is about $1.5 million. And they go up from there. Crazy, huh? So that essentially makes everybody a multimillionaire out here. You pretty much have to be able to afford to live in the area that I live in. You have to be a millionaire. I could put my house on the market and get probably $1.5 million for it. But the problem is, anything I'd go to buy would cost me as much in this area anyway. I'd have to leave the area to cash in. And that's exactly what some people are doing. They're selling their homes and they're moving out of the area to places like Kelowna and Kamloops and other outlying areas where they can get a house for half the price. And then the fire season hits and they're all freaking out. Criticizing the fire departments and the government for not doing enough, and hey, they were the ones that made the choice to move there. I think I just did that one already. So this one here looks like there's maybe a connection here on this one is bad. Tell you a story about one of the guys I worked with up until a few years ago. He retired and sold his house here. He did that. He did what I was just explaining. He downsized. He moved out of the area. He sold his house, and I think he moved to the West Bank. But he sold his house. I think he was saying he sold his house for, at the time, I think it was 1.2 or 1.3 million. And he went and bought a house in the interior for, I think he said 700,000. So he put about $500,000 in the bank. And he lasted 1 year and went through a brutal winter where the temperature got down to like -30. And his wife didn't like it. She did not like the heat in the summer, and she definitely did not like all the snow and the ice in the winter. So he sold the house there, tried to come back to this area, and the house that he had sold a year and a half prior was on the market again, and his old house was now 1.7 million. He sold for 1.3, and it had gone up $400,000 in like 2 years. So he couldn't afford to buy the same house back that he had lived in for like 30 years. But when he sold up in the interior, he didn't make any money. It basically sold for in the same range, maybe a little more than he paid for it, but it wasn't the huge gains like we've seen down here where I am. Here it's just been crazy. This connector here looks like it's got some connections that could use touching up. I don't know if I'm on camera or not. Let's just make sure that you guys can see what I'm doing. There's a connector along the edge here. Looks like that one could use touching up. This one on the end here was a bit dull looking. Lead-free solder crap. Stuff's terrible. Okay, after looking at the board, I think all the ones that were questionable I have addressed. So let's put the board back in and we'll try powering the setup and see whether it fires up any faster than what he was claiming, which said it sometimes would take a couple minutes to start up. So if this turns on quickly, and then the problem is probably resolved. Can't reconnect the two connectors. And get the power out for the unit. I don't have any speakers on it, so. Okay, I got a remote control, power on. I do believe the set turned on. Off. There we go. Six seconds. Let's put the back on it and see if it works. There it is. It is working and starting up nice and quick. So I'm pretty confident that that's where our fault was those connections on the diodes in the power supply, and of course the loose ground screws didn't help matters. So at least everything's tight on here on the set now, so you shouldn't have any problems caused by bad connections or bad grounds, but I'm sure that the fault was the diodes that had come broken. The solder connections are broken because, as you saw, they were bad, and the set was, as he said, was taking a long time to start up. It's now starting up in 6 seconds, which is what it's supposed to. So there you go. Now you know what goes wrong with these ones. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and you'll be notified when I post a new video. If you want to support my channel, you can certainly do it through Patreon or through PayPal. Until next time, we'll catch you later.